Time to head out to the shop. Let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to the stage. Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. We got extra weight on the door stopper now because it gets windy. How you doing this morning? I'm glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jimmy. We're making it work if you don't know what's going on. I got fancy intros now, get a little fancy dancy. I don't like playing those kind of games. I just like to do my thing. I kind of like to learn something. I like to have some fun. I like to teach something. And I like to get things fixed and back on the road. That's why I became a mechanic. Those of you who've been around a little while, you know what's about to happen. We're gonna get in the shop. We got a transmission to do on this Caravan we've been working on for a while. We're doing a warranty one. It took us a while to get another. They're not easy to come by for some reason lately. So we're gonna take care of that, and I'm sure we'll get something else going today too. That'll probably be done by lunch, I hope. So we'll see. Stay tuned. Let's do it. First things first, Caravan transmission. Let's do it. I usually angle this arm so it doesn't interfere with the suspension if I can. So we'll play with that a minute and come back. Keep it down over there, will you? Get that cross member and the front mount out first. $18 in the front, $16 in the back. That's not a good look for the Ford. At least it wasn't found on the road dead. Mountain wrench for these guys. I could probably fit a short socket and electric ratchet in there, but I'd have to worry about when to take it out. We'll just do a manually. No big deal. Now if we want to get that crankshaft turning, we're going to use the old Tecton 1/2" ratchet with a 27mm snap-on socket, because I happen to have one. I got to find all my torque converter bolts. Always turn the engine clockwise. I think those are 18s, and I think there's 4 of them. They are not very long. Might have to get a straight socket. Oh, there it goes. Should be the last one. Get a little more torque out of the tool by spinning it and then dropping it onto the bolt. I normally wouldn't do it, but these transmissions, Fast and Furious Chevy Lumina, these transmissions have been coming with new bolts, so you got a little schmudge on your face. Let me get that. That's better.
Hey Riley,
All right, 2 bolts I'll leave in the motor. But when I put the new train in, I'll have 2 bolts there that I can thread up and know they're in the right spot and not have to worry about all that. This thing's about ready, I think. I did pull the coolant overflow out of this time. I don't know if you remember last time. Our dipstick was giving me trouble on it. And this time I remembered it. See, I'm not getting senile yet, even though my birthday's next week. All right, simmer down over there. Got a hot set. The dowel pin last time really fought me hard, but this time it came out. All my work was not for naught. Now it's a combination of lowering the motor and lowering the transmission until we clear that subframe in the back. You can also roll this. It is definitely a tight squeeze on these things. science of leverage, that's all. Why hurt your back? Use the lift. Now it's safe to transfer the converter retention bracket. Now, I usually don't worry too much about it, but it just so happens this one happens to be aligned with the alignment hole. The ones that are fully round are for extra leeway. This is the alignment one to make sure the converter is lined up with the other holes. So I'll be able to tighten them and only turn the engine once. Not really a big deal to me, but I know a lot of viewers see me care about it, so that's what's important. I want viewers to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. No stress. Before I tighten any bell housing bolts more than finger tight, I got them a little bottomed out on both, one on each side by hand. I put a converter bolt in and I get it threaded and give it a jiggle. Make sure that converter still jiggles in there and it's not bound up, so I know it didn't come off the pump, because that will do some damage. Now I got a bolt started, I know it's lined up. Tighten all these down, get them converter bolts in. It's not bad looking at the clock and Bill going by, but I got about 2 hours and 40 minutes in it so far, so I like these jobs. These are not Audi evaporators, let's put it that way. Going in with a power tool is different than coming out. I'm not going to bind it against the pan. Going in, I'm just going to add room, right? So save the pickle juicers. Got to be careful with these two. These two bolts are longer than the others because they go all the way through to the starter, not just into the bell housing or block or transmission. Pull the jack out of the way, it's easier to get to that rear mount. What I do on these is there's a bolt that goes in this way and 3 down from the top, and a 15 goes through the rear mount. I loosen that 15, take the 18mm head bolts out, turn it up out of the way, and then tighten that 15 back up. So you don't have to take that bracket all the way out. You just gotta lift it clear of the transmission while you're working there. See how this just clears the transmission case. So now I gotta get those bolts back and loosen that 15 to get started. Alrighty. One more bolt, and then I can put the heat shield on it. I like to get these bracket bolts from the bottom while the weight's being held up by the tranny jack, so everything's lined up nice. Oh, easy now, easy. You guys been drinking? Keep trying to get you off the sauce. You know, a couple drinks is one thing. You start wobbling, you can't stand. It's time to slow it down.
Order the other filter, but this is one of them.
Okay. Put these convertibles in here. Shouldn't be nothing but a thing. And it came with new ones like I was thinking they would. So, get these locked down, and a little plastic cover goes over this hole. Put my 2 little rubber plugs in. These are just for axles for the oil pan bolts in the back, so you don't have to take the transmission down. Although I do way more transmissions than oil pans, but still. At least they put some thought into it, I'm saying. That's all I ask. Just realize that someday what you're creating is going to have to be fixed. Even though they want a disposable world, I guess. People aren't going to throw them away until it's cost effective. Most people. And the next thing is to get this mount up in here. You face it the right way. It gets the 3 16mm head bolts. They get me a new front mount. I noticed a big tear in the front mount. I didn't see it last time. I don't remember seeing it. It's not expensive. I'm not going to charge extra labor to put it in. It's 2 bolts. So. mount will be here in 20 minutes. Hopefully I'll have this all buttoned up by then, ready for that mount. It's a little tricky to clear that center support bearing on the axle. You got to clear the power steering pump. You got to kind of get it just right. If you have it in the wrong spot, you got to take the axle back out. 16s. You got to be triple jointed. Some of these. Yeah, but they'll go. Jiggle it just right. There it goes. I can feel something happening. Jiggle it. Move your hips left to right. And all of a sudden, it's in. Nice. The top one, yeah, she's a not so easy. She's a fighter. And we're going to get an extension right here. Ooh, that's all right. That's 2 turns right there. I think we're good. There we go. Winner. Where's my checker flag? Every one of these bolts takes a different setup. I use a 3-inch extension and my deep swivel for the inside bolt, my transmission extension with a deep swivel for the top bolt, and then just the deep swivel for the outside bolt. It's all part of the game. Got my new mount. It's got a little ear on the bottom, faces forward. I'm not tighten that too much till I get the bracket underneath. Give you some pry action right here. Alright, I might have to get a fold jack. It's taking a little more of a pry than I like. Whew, good workout. You might remember that one was bent real bad. I had to straighten it in the vise. It's still bent, just not real bad. I'm gonna go put this tranny jack away. It'll only take a second. Double check my bolts. Moving down here. Alright, we let it down, button up the axles and the brakes. We're underway. This thing is 75% done. Got my washer on there too. Don't forget that. Now these little strut bolts, they got serrated teeth on there to hold them in place. So once you get it into that part, you're golden. Just put the nuts on there and tighten her up. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. Axle. Not axle rose, axle nut. Same thing. Just kidding. I like axle rose. It was just a joke. That's all it was. Just messing around, that's all. It makes me a little sad I even have to say that, but some people are awful sensitive nowadays. If I said something about the sky, they'd think I don't like oxygen. This goes on there, trust me. Let's put a nut on here so it stops jiggling. Hold still a second. I'm almost done. See how you're going to be. This is going to be a dance. We haven't danced in a while. Let's dance a little bit. I don't care. Let's do it. I have to figure out how to do that little 2 hours later. We danced, and the dance is over. Don't worry, we got another side though. It's only over on this side. We're going to take a brief intermission and dance with the other side next. I got to look up the torque specs for the axle nuts too. I don't remember. Now, when you're going to torque axle nuts, you can have someone step on the brake. So what I do, I just take the center cap out of the wheel. So I put my socket through there with the tire on the ground a little bit, and the lift kind of keeping it from rolling. Alright, 118. I got a feeling it's tighter than that already. Yep. It's a little over, but I'll take this kid and I redid it. I redid it. Relax. Relax. 100 on the wheels. My 2 studs, you remember where those go, right? They're gonna hold the air pump bracket onto there, and then the nut part holds the cable and this little bracket on. So I gotta put this in last with these 2 studs, because the stud actually goes through the bracket to hold it on, and then the accessories go on top of it. So I'm gonna work my way around and get all these bolts in. And I got to get the shifter bracket under that too. I tightened these nuts for this already. I might have to loosen them up to see if I can get it under there. We'll see if it'll fit. It fits right under there. It's not even tight. Maybe it's designed to have a little gap, but I'll take it. I think last time I was very worried about putting it all together at the same time, and it cost me some more time. It's going smooth now. I just got to grab a 16 and snug those up before I move on. Well, it's fixing to get crazy up in here. Afternoon thunderstorm time. It's not even lunchtime yet. Let's get these tightened up before we get distracted by lightning and thunder. Alright. Couple mounts in, just 4 bolts. That was easy. Tray is 3 bolts, even easier. You just got to make sure you capture the bracket for the trainee line or the AC line or the power steering line, whatever it is. I think it's a power steering line. And then you got a whole bunch of push pins. Remember yesterday I showed taking all these out. Trying not to repeat 100% of the process, coming apart, going together, all that stuff, you know. Most of it is pretty straightforward. Cooler lines are in. I had to put those metal retainer clips back in and transfer these from the other transmission. It didn't come with new ones. Kind of surprised. I mean, they have O-rings in them, make it leak and stuff. They normally don't. Emphasis on could. Vacuum pumps in. Electrical connector. Alright. Get some training fluid in this thing and the battery. We'll fire it up. Alright. I put 3 more quarts in it. It's got fluid in it. Came up on the dipstick a bit. I added 3 quarts. I don't want to hurt this transmission, so I'd rather have it a little overfilled and pull some back out if I have to. I suspect I'll have to add more. I'm not sure if the converter's full or anything, so no notes about it. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Let's fire this thing up. 133,552 miles. I believe this is 2014 or so. 2016. 2016. It's on its 3rd transmission. 2 of them because it never left. Love rating on this one's about a 7. They take good care of this car. Front bumper's a little beat up. I got to give them a hard time about bouncing off of stuff, but they keep it clean. I mentioned earlier the stereo's not in there too. I hope it's been like that, but I doubt very much someone would steal the stereo, put the bezel back in, because you take the bezel out to get to the screws. So my memory doesn't serve me well with that. I'm gonna hope that that's how it was. First thing I'm gonna do before anything else is clear all the codes from the past transmissions and do a quick learn again, even though it was only went about 6 miles. Still want to do it again just to be sure. I did flush out the training cooler again like last time in case that other transmission did some damage. Oh, I got another update again. Almost every day this thing has updates. Somebody was telling me, matter of fact, it was a tool truck guy, so you don't take it with a grain of salt, but he said that Top Don's doing what Autel was doing about 10 years ago with pirated software. He said the reason they're inexpensive is because they haven't gotten caught up to them yet. I'm not sure if that's true or what the dealio is with all that. I don't know the ins and outs of the software business. I won't pretend to. So we'll see what happens though with that. Hopefully that's not a... When they do these updates, it asks you to update it all the time and you don't know. Like Autel, they had a thing where one day you did an update and all of a sudden you lost Ford because Ford sued them and won. So, we're going to go to system list because not everybody has, and I'm just going to smart scan all the modules and make sure we clear all the codes related to having the battery out of it. I'm going to take care of that. I'll show you the quick learn once the code clearing is over. That's the easy part. No powertrain codes. I wonder if I cleared them out last time. It's very possible. That should go pretty quick. Okay. It's got a BCM code. That's all right. Enter in the PCM. we'll get in this PCM and we will tell it we've put a new transmission in. We need to do a quick learn. Cam crank relearn, variable line pressure counters. Well, I'm going to do that too. Quick learn, bunk. Okay, that probably does both in one shot, but I'm not sure. Engine must be running, the brake pedal must be pressed, and the parking brake set. Shift lever to OD. Shift to neutral. Shift lever to OD. Quick learn complete. Move to park. That's all it wants to do to make sure it knows you got a new transmission. It sees the gears being selected and knows it's starting with a clean slate. So it puts it in learn mode and it learns way quicker. If you leave it without doing that, then it's running the transmission on the other parameters, and the clutch lockup times and all those things are not right for the new parts. And you can rapidly wear out a reman transmission or new transmission if you don't do it. So it's pretty important. Let's get out there and verify we got our fluid correct. Take this thing for a drive, check it for leaks, etc., etc. Looks to be about a quart low. So we'll put that in and we'll check it one more time. Using our little universal Mercedes style dipstick. I want the fluid range about here. This is hot. So I want it at the top of this one, not quite into hot. But the little one's okay. We'll keep, I'll add a quart, check it, see where it's at, add more if I have to, over and over again. I'm not going to bore you guys with that. I'm going to take this thing for a drive. I know one thing, I don't hear the pump going, it sounded like an empty power steering pump. Alright, I haven't driven it yet. I remember when I fired it up and after letting it run a few minutes, I got a little misfire. It kind of comes and goes. It's not a hardcore misfire. I know a lot of guys were saying, oh, valve guides and valve seats, and I know, and I've done a bunch of heads on them and stuff for valve seats falling out of the heads, and the 3.7s and 4.7s are terrible about it. These do it, but not quite as often. I got my vacuum gauge. We're going to see if this misfire is mechanical. If it's mechanical, this needle's going to bounce. So anytime a cylinder is not coming to the party because of compression, especially valve train related problems like a burnt valve or a valve sticking open, that kind of thing, that cylinder will drop off. And when it drops off, it'll be seen as a bounce of the needle and the pulses on the intake. So quick, easy way to do a mechanical test without getting into a compression test is to pull off one of the vacuum lines and plug the vacuum gauge in and see if the needle's steady. Now this thing's steady as a rock, and the misfire counter is going up while the vacuum gauge is steady. So it's going to end up probably being an injector, or did I possibly crack one of the spark plugs when I put, if you remember when I put the first transmission and I also did a tune-up, all the spark plugs were loose. There was a couple of things I found that were really making me happy that the spark plugs are going to fix a lot. But I still have this little misfire in too. It runs way better than it did, but it's not perfect. So I think what we're going to do next, I'm going to have them get me an injector, and I'm going to pull the plenum off after it cools down a little bit, and I'll ohm the injectors. And if cylinder 2 has a different reading at all from the other 5, then we're going to put an injector in it. That's the plan anyway. If I don't see a problem with the resistance between injectors, then I'll take a look at that spark plug, make sure I didn't crack the plug slightly or something weird like that. Maybe try moving the coil, because the coil can go to a back cylinder. You don't have to take the intake off for those. So that's what we're going to do next. After this thing cools down, of course. Alright, let's get this plenum off of here. Take a look at this injector and spark plug, see what's going on. Cylinder 2 is our desired target. Little bracket in the back has 2 studs, 2 10s, and a little 13 on the head. I just take them all out of the way so I can set it back. The front one, I can just slide the studs out of the bracket because the front bracket's a little bit harder to get to down on the exhaust manifold. My suspicion is cylinder 2 injector is going to ohm differently than the others. What the heck is going on? Oh, battery's dead. That's terrible news. A little more piston vinegar now. Now I can get to my goodies. Get a little block of wood or something. And pull a couple injector connectors off and hold them out. Release tab. A little squeeze, allegedly. I heard something click. There it is. And we'll do number 4. These go 246, the back's 135. You can see the rear valve covers ahead of the front one. It's generally cylinder 1. Set this thing on ohms, which is this little horseshoe looking symbol. It goes on. Check my meter. You hear the tone? I expect about 12 to 16 ohms, I believe. 13 ohms. Locked in. Cylinder 2. Higher resistance. So it's definitely a difference. Let me check the 3rd cylinder just to see what that one reads. Now we'll see if I get 13 or so on this one. And the first injector is definitely 14, 13 and a half. I'm gonna run through these a couple more times. That's only one way to test an injector, by the way. There's multiple ways injectors can go bad. It could be really dirty and clogged on the tip. Possible too. If I don't see something wrong with the plug, I may just put the injector in there. The plugs look very similar. The one out of cylinder 4 looks like it could potentially be slightly hotter, but not much. It's a couple of bolts to lift the rail up and put the injector in. I want to get this car back to my neighbor. There's a small possibility it could be something going on with an injector driver, something like that. Alright, I think I'm going to do that. Get over here, you. Now I could hook up the best way to really check these is to amp ramp and see what the pattern looks like. You'll be able to figure out if it's electrical, mechanical, etc., etc. But it's so time consuming. I don't want all the gas to drip down the cylinder and add a new problem. I gotta get the O-ring out of there. It's so time consuming. The injector is $38. So that doesn't buy you 15 minutes labor. So it doesn't pay to bust out the scope. In the 15 minutes it takes to get this injector changed, put it back together, another 15 minutes and try it. It's not my preference, but it's the most cost-effective way, so that's what we're gonna do. That is all right, mama. Any way will do. I got rags over the port, so nothing bad is gonna happen with that. Let me get this back together and we come back, I'll show you how it's running. See if I was right or not. You might notice I did move the coil and plug as well. So now if the problem's fixed, we're good. If it's moved to cylinder 4, we know I got a defective coil or plug. Those are the only 2 ways it's gonna go. I'm gonna get the scan tool and the car talking and fire this thing up and see what happens. Let this thing run a little bit and warm up. We'll see how it runs after a few minutes. All right, we got some zeros. Oh, we got a 1. That's terrible news. Seems to be running better, but not perfect. Kind of strange. I'm gonna take this thing for a drive and see how it runs on the road. I think we're good to go. (2010) Honda Civic. This poor car. I'm sorry, little Honda. This is when I wish we had smell-o-vision. You guys would really appreciate this. This is a perfect candidate for smell-o-vision. You would stop watching the video if you had to smell it. He's in here for an AC check, and he said something about the rubber in the window is missing. Please advise. And what's happened is the rubber in the window is falling off. So it needs new rubber weather stripping. These little pieces come out. This little metal piece holds the rubber, and it goes against the glass to help guide water and kind of clean the heavy dirt off the glass. It doesn't really clean it. They're called wipes, but you still got to clean the glass, just like you got to vacuum the car occasionally and stuff. The air was off, so I turned it on and verified it doesn't work. It blows hot. So I'll get the machine. We'll see if there's Freon in it first. This poor thing, 2010, 168,965 miles. The maintenance counter says minus 10,000 miles. The wrench light was on when I drove it in. The tire light was on when I drove it in. And the oil change sticker says it was due at 166, and we're at 169, so it's 3,000 miles overdue for an oil change. Let's go take a look. Got some Freon. It does look a little low. It's showing 65 psi. So the temperature right now is around 90. So this thing should be at 100, 110 psi, somewhere in there. Generally 10 to 20% over ambient air temperature, just for a rough idea. If you want to look at pressures and have an idea whether it's out or not. That's not how you measure how much Freon's in there. But if it's over ambient temperature, 10 to 20%, you're probably full of Freon. This thing's not. But it's not empty. Let's fire it up and see what the compressor clutch does. Well, the fan turned on and the engine's not hot, but the compressor did not turn on. Don't ruin my light. This is a new one. That is strange. Give this thing a little lug tap. Oh, came back to it, it's on. That makes me a little bit sad. But it's on and the pressures were low. That's definitely low on Freon. The next thing I'm going to do is grab the dye light. See where the Freon went, and keep in mind it might have an intermittent problem going on with the compressor. It shouldn't have taken that long to turn on. It's possible it did it because it's low on Freon, but normally within a minute and a half at the most, you're going to have the compressor on if there's any Freon in it, and the cycling switch will let it close. Okay, let's get the dye light real quick. Not seeing any leaks. All right, 450 kilograms, about a pound, 0.95 pounds or something. I'm gonna pull the Freon out, fill it up, make sure it works, see if that compressor clutch runs properly. Let's take a look at the oil while we're waiting for the machine to work. There's a little on the bottom of the dipstick there, I guess. It's not bad. Not quite a quart low yet. Alright, so I'm going to put an oil change on the list. Probably evac and recharge with dye if the system works properly once I fill it up. The problem is, some Freon had to come out somewhere and I don't see where, so that means likely an evaporator. I could grab the sniffer and stick it in there, but you guys know how I feel about that. I'll ask them up front what the customer might want to do and when the last time it might have been recharged was, and we'll go from there. These are pretty bad for condensers. I'm aware of that. So, but the condenser doesn't have any dye in it right now. And there is dye in the system. Alright. Now it's full. See how it works. The compressor did turn on a little quicker that time. The high side's pretty low though. It's kind of strange. Variable displacement compressors will do that sometimes. I'll give this thing a second, see if it gets cold. Doesn't feel like it's doing too much, but it's starting to do something. Sometimes when it's an evaporator at this point too, you'll actually smell something weird coming from the evaporator, which is Freon, or refrigerant, or tetrachlorofluoromethane, whatever the scientific term is. It doesn't feel like it's getting very cold. Compressor's running because it's pulling the Freon, it's pulling the pressures down. Interesting. Alright, I'm gonna let it run a minute. We'll see if it gets any better after it runs a minute. Now that's odd. I added 0.3 of a pound more Freon, or refrigerant. I'm sorry, I keep calling it Freon because I'm old. Hard to teach an old dog new tricks. But I added more refrigerant, and it got nice and cold now. I put the specified amount in, and it wasn't full apparently, so the machine might not be working quite right. So just going by pressures, I knew it was safe to add some more, and it did. It might be slightly overfilled now, but I don't think so. Pulls the low side down. If it was overfilled when you hit the gas, then the low side would only come down a little bit, and the high side would start to spike. So it's not like it's overfilled. I think the machine just ain't working right. It's super cold now. I'll tell you what, it smells, that's for sure. All right, let me go up front and see how crazy they want to get with trying to find that leak. Because we have a nitrogen kit. I can put nitrogen on it. I can go around with soapy water and nitrogen and try to find a leak that way too. But it's time consuming and adds expense. We could put a little bit more dye, put some refrigerant in it, and as long as he didn't just recently recharge it, we can try that and see how it goes. Maybe we'll be able to find oil or dye later on. So let's go check. All right, guys, as you can see behind me here, we're all closed up. We're going to continue on the Civic tomorrow. Everything's buttoned up for the day. Thanks for watching today's video. Appreciate your company. It was real nice having you around. Hope I see you in the next video too, because you're awesome.